Knowing your limits isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Jacinda Ardern recognized that stepping down was not giving up. It was showing the strength to lead by example, even when that meant stepping away. You have to understand this. Knowing your limits isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the kind of self-awareness most people are too afraid to tap into, because society teaches us to grind until we break, to prove our worth through exhaustion, to equate burnout with bravery. But Jacinda Ardern showed the world something different, something radical, something powerful. She stood in front of millions and said, "I no longer feel I can do the job justice." And that takes guts, that takes clarity, that takes the kind of internal strength most people never cultivate because they're too busy trying to outrun their own boundaries. She didn't collapse in silence, she didn't hide. She stood tall, she spoke her truth, and she did it with grace. Let me tell you something, the world will always ask more of you, more hours, more output, more strength. And if you're not careful, you'll give and give until there's nothing left of you but a shell carrying expectations that were never yours to begin with. But what Jacinda did, that was an act of reclaiming power. She modeled what it looks like to be a leader who listens not just to the people, but to herself. She honored the whisper inside that said, "It's time." And so many of us ignore that whisper. We silence it. We shame it, we push it away because we think it means we're weak. But no, don't get it twisted. That voice is the gateway to your strength. That voice is your compass. That voice is your truth. So if you've been feeling tired, lost, stretched thin, I need you to ask yourself, is this exhaustion or is it your intuition begging you to pay attention? Are you pushing through pain because the world says keep going? Or are you brave enough to pause, reflect, and say, this isn't serving me anymore? That moment, that pause, that's where your power lives. That's where your transformation begins. Because only when you know your limits can you truly expand your life in the right direction. Purdy once said, when you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond. And Jacinda did exactly that. She didn't wait for collapse. She chose her moment. She took control of her narrative, and guess what? The world respected her even more for it. Because leadership isn't about pretending to be invincible. It's about modeling what healthy strength looks like. And sometimes that means saying no. Sometimes that means stepping back. Sometimes that means declaring that your well-being is worth protecting, even in the face of expectation. You can be powerful and still say, I need to rest. You can be brave and still say, I've reached my edge. And in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. That is not weakness, that is legacy. That is how we change the conversation for everyone who comes after us. Leadership isn't about holding on, it's about letting go at the right time. True leadership lies in listening deeply to yourself and choosing courage over comfort. Even if the world expects you to keep going. Leadership isn't about how long you can hold on. It's about knowing when to let go. And not just letting go when things fall apart, but letting go when everything looks fine on the outside. But deep down, you know you've given all you've got. That's what Jacinda Ardern taught us when she stepped down. That moment wasn't weakness. That moment was revolutionary. It was a declaration that real leaders don't wait until they're broken to step back. They lead even in their exit. They know the power of bowing out with intention, not apology. And let's be honest, how many of us keep clinging to titles, relationships, jobs, identities, just because we're afraid of what people will say if we let go? We wear struggle like it's a badge of honor, but what if the real honor is in the release? Jacinda looked the world in the eye and said, I no longer have enough in the tank to do the job justice. And let that line sit with you, not I failed, not I gave up. She said, I no longer have enough in the tank. That is self-awareness. That is strength. That is leadership. We live in a culture that worships endurance, that tells us to just keep going. But leadership isn't about survival. It's about responsibility, and she took responsibility for her energy, for her clarity, for the quality of leadership her country deserved. Can you imagine the power of being so aligned with your values that you walk away from one of the most powerful positions on earth? Not because you have to, but because you choose to. That's not just leadership, that's legacy. You see, holding on is easy when the world applauds you for it. Letting go, that's the hard part. That's where courage lies. That's where your soul whispers, there's something more for you now. And here's the truth most people avoid. Your soul can't expand when your hands are gripping something you've outgrown. Whether it's a title, a business, a chapter of your life, it's not your job to cling to it just because others can't imagine you without it. You are more than what you do. You are more than what people expect of you, and Jacinda showed us that by choosing integrity over image. So ask yourself, where are you holding on out of fear? Where are you afraid to release what no longer fits? And what would open up in your life if you stopped performing strength and started embodying it? Because letting go isn't the end. It's the door to the next thing. It's the sacred space where new purpose is born. You don't need to wait for a crash to claim clarity. You don't need to prove your worth through burnout. Your worth was never in the title. It's in the truth you live by. And when you let go from that place, oh, the world feels it. You become the example someone else needed. You become the permission someone else never knew they were waiting for. You become the kind of leader who doesn't just change policies. You change people. Burnout doesn't discriminate. Even the strongest need to heal Jacinda's decision highlighted that self-care is not selfish, it's essential. Even world leaders must recharge to stay aligned with their purpose. Burnout doesn't care about your title. It doesn't care if you're a prime minister, a CEO, a parent, a teacher, or someone just trying to get through the day. It shows up when you've given so much of yourself for so long that there's nothing left to give, and the hardest part. We've been trained to ignore the signs. We wear exhaustion like a badge. We call it hustle. We glorify it. But Jacinda Ardern changed that. She stood in front of the world, the pressure of a nation on her shoulders, and said, I no longer have enough in the tank. She didn't wait for her health to collapse. She didn't wait until she resented the very role she once felt called to. She honored the warning signs, and that takes more strength than pretending everything is fine. Let me tell you something raw and real. Ignoring burnout does not make you strong. It makes you silent in your suffering. It traps you in a life that looks full on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. Jacinda's choice shattered that illusion. She reminded all of us that the strongest among us are the ones who pause, the ones who reflect, the ones who say, I love this work, I've given my all, and now I need to heal. That is not quitting. That is conscious leadership. That is power in its purest form. Burnout isn't something you can power through. You can't outsmart it or out-hustle it, and if you keep ignoring it, it will find a way to make you stop through your health, your relationships, your spirit. That's why we need to normalize what Jacinda did. We need to create space in our lives for recovery before we reach the edge. This is what Amy Purdy has talked about in her journey too. How life will test your limits, but how it's your responsibility to rebuild those limits from a place of intention and truth. You are not meant to live in a constant state of depletion. You are not meant to run on fumes. There is power in saying, I need rest. There is courage in stepping away before you break. There is wisdom in protecting your light, especially when the world is asking you to shine at full brightness all the time. Jacinda modeled something rare and necessary. A world leader choosing personal well-being, choosing family, choosing inner peace over performance. And in doing so, she reminded every one of us that we are human before we are anything else. That we are allowed to breathe. That we are allowed to choose stillness, So if you've been waking up every day feeling like you're running on empty, I need you to hear this. You don't owe anyone your burnout. You don't need to prove your worth through your suffering. Take the break. Set the boundary. Walk away from what is draining you, not because you're weak, but because you are finally strong enough to know what you deserve. Because burnout is not a reflection of your failure. It's a signal that it's time to reclaim your energy, your joy. Your sole purpose evolves. So must we, just as Amy Purdy reshaped her life after tragedy. Jacinda evolved her path, understanding that purpose can shift, and that's a sign of growth, not failure. Purpose evolves. Let that sink in. The reason you started may not be the reason you continue, and that's not failure, that's growth. That's evolution, and Jacinda Ardern embodied that truth in one of the most profound ways possible. She didn't cling to her identity as a world leader because it once gave her meaning. She recognized that the calling that once lit her up had started to shift. And instead of forcing herself to stay in a role that no longer aligned with her inner compass, she did what few people have the courage to do. She listened to that shift, and she moved with it. We are not trees. We're not meant to stay rooted in one purpose forever, and yet so many of us feel trapped by our past decisions, by expectations, by fear of letting go of what we've outgrown. But what if evolving isn't betrayal, it's becoming? What if the dreams that once defined you were only meant to get you to this point, and now something deeper is calling you forward? That's what Jacinda honored. That's what Amy Purdy had to honor after losing her legs and asking, "Who am I now?" Purpose isn't a finish line. It's a living, breathing force. It grows with you, and if you don't allow that growth, you suffocate your own potential. Some people will not understand when you change direction. They'll say, "But you were so good at this," or "You've come so far. Why give it up now?" But purpose doesn't answer to approval. Purpose answers to truth. You will know when it's time to pivot, because the same work that once energized you starts to drain you. The same goals that once felt electric now feel heavy. That's your soul whispering, "We're done here. We're ready for what's next," and ignoring that whisper out of fear or guilt. That's how you end up living a life that looks successful but feels empty. Let me be clear, you are allowed to change. You are allowed to start again. You are allowed to say, "I've done what I came here to do, and now it's time for a new mission." That's not walking away from purpose. That asterisk is asterisk purpose. That's you staying in integrity with who you are now, not who you used to be. That's you expanding instead of shrinking to fit a box that no longer holds your fire. That's you writing a new chapter, even when the old one still has readers. And that, my friend, is leadership at the highest level, not just the kind that governs nations, but the kind that governs your life. You don't need permission to evolve, you just need to trust the pull. Jacinda trusted it, Amy trusted it, and you can trust it too. The world doesn't need people who stay stuck in past versions of themselves. It needs people brave enough to follow the flicker of a new light, even when it leads them into unknown territory. That's where your next purpose is waiting. That's where your next greatness begins. You don't need a title to make an impact. Jacinda's legacy proves that power doesn't live in a position. It lives in your actions, values, and the courage to walk away when necessary. You don't need a title to make an impact. Let me repeat that for the people in the back. You don't need a title to make an impact. We live in a world that worships labels: Prime Minister, CEO, influencer, author, doctor, founder. And while those titles can be powerful, they are not your source of power. They are not the thing that makes your voice matter. What matters is your values. What matters is your integrity. What matters is the courage to show up for what you believe in, even after the world stops clapping for you. That's what Jacinda Ardern showed us when she stepped down. She didn't need to stay in office to continue shaping the world. Her impact didn't retire the day she walked away from the podium. It evolved, it deepened, because real leadership doesn't live in the spotlight. It lives in how you carry yourself when the lights go out. Too many people attach their worth to the position they hold. I'm only valuable if I'm in charge. I'm only making a difference if I have authority. That mindset will break you. It will make you cling to jobs, relationships, and versions of yourself that are no longer aligned, just so you can keep the illusion of mattering. But you already matter. You mattered before the title. You will matter after it. And if your voice only feels powerful when it's amplified by a role, then it's not your voice you trust, it's the microphone. That's not the goal. The goal is to know that wherever you go, your presence carries weight. Whether you're leading a nation or raising a child, whether you're giving a TD talk or comforting one person in pain, impact isn't measured in followers. It's measured in how deeply you show up. Jacinda's decision reminds us that walking away doesn't mean disappearing. It means redefining influence. It means choosing depth over status. She didn't lose her power. She redirected it. She didn't abandon leadership, she embodied it in a new form. And that's exactly what Amy Purdy has done, too. After surviving tragedy, she didn't return to who she was. She became something entirely new, a speaker, an advocate, a light for millions. Not because someone gave her a title, but because she owned her truth and shared it boldly. So what are you holding back from because you think you don't have the right label? What message are you sitting on? What story are you silencing? What dream are you delaying? Because you think no one will listen unless you have credentials attached to your name. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for validation. Impact doesn't come from above. It comes from within. The world is changed by those who dare to speak, to act, to love, to lead from the inside out. You don't need to be elected to inspire people. You just need to be authentic. You don't need a crown to build a legacy. You just need a reason and the heart to carry it forward. That's the kind of impact that doesn't expire. That's the kind of leadership that echoes long after the title is gone. Be the then, I'll BOLDE, FINSTSLL, YBNTP Inerg Foruf. Good, her decision invites us all to reflect. Where in our lives are we pushing past the red flags? Where do we need to honor the quiet voice within? Stepping back can be the boldest step forward. It's not the flashy move, not the one that gets standing ovations or applause from the crowd, but it's the one that real leaders make when they're in tune with their soul. And that's exactly what Jacinda Ardern did. She didn't wait until she was forced to leave, until life dragged her out of the role, kicking and screaming. No, she looked inward, felt the shift, and had the courage to say, it's time. That takes guts, that takes clarity. And let me tell you, most people don't have it. Most people cling to roles and routines they've outgrown because they're afraid of what stepping back might look like. But Jacinda showed the world that sometimes the most powerful move is not pressing on, it's letting go. And you need to ask yourself, where in your life are you holding on because you think quitting equals weakness? Where are you pushing through just to maintain an image, even though your spirit is quietly crumbling beneath the surface? The bravest thing you can do sometimes is admit you need to slow down, not because you're broken, but because you're awake. Because you recognize that growth doesn't always happen in motion. It happens in pause, in stillness, in breathing space, and that's what Jacinda claimed for herself. Not a collapse, but a conscious exhale. We're told to keep climbing the mountain, but what if the view you really need is at the base, where your heart finally catches up with your ambition? What if the real victory isn't reaching the top, but knowing when to turn around and say, this isn't my summit anymore? That's not defeat, that's mastery. That's a person who understands that success without soul is just noise. That's a person who's not afraid to pivot toward peace. Amy Purdy knows this feeling too. After losing her legs, she had to stop completely. Not by choice, but by force, and yet, in that stopping, a new path opened. Something even more powerful was born. Her story reminds us that the pause is not the end. It's the space where transformation happens. It's the moment you finally see your life with fresh eyes and say, okay, now I know who I really am. So if something inside you is whispering, step back. Don't ignore it. That whisper isn't fear. It's guidance. It's the wiser, future version of you pulling you toward your next chapter. And yes, stepping back might scare people. It might confuse them, but that's okay. Your journey isn't about their understanding. It's about your alignment. And aligned decisions often look like rebellion in a world addicted to constant hustle. When you step back from what no longer serves you, you're not retreating. You're repositioning. You're clearing space for new direction, new energy, new clarity. And that is the fiercest kind of forward motion. That is how legacies are reborn, not just in the spotlight, but in the quiet decision to honor what's real.